Jerusalem, the holy city of Muslims, Christians, and Jews alike, has been the site of great battles for many years. 9 crusades were organized to take it back from the Muslims. After being conquered in 638 during the caliphate of Hazrat Umar, it was Saladin Ayyubi who 88 years later uprooted the Crusaders from this holy city. The city remained under Muslim rule for a long time, but was again occupied by Christians in 1099 at the end of the First Crusade. Saladin Ayyubi was born in 1138 in Tikrit, Iraq. His father, Najmeddin Ayyub, served as governor of Tikrit, Baalbek and Damascus under the Zengi dynasty of the Great Seljuks. Saladin Ayyubi grew up in Baalbek and Damascus and received a good education. At the age of 26, he was taken into service by his uncle, Asad al-Din Shirkuh, who was an army commander. Saladin Ayyubi participated in 3 expeditions to Egypt under the Fatimid rule between 1164 and 1169 under the command of his uncle Shirkuh. During these expeditions, he stood out as a good commander and statesman. From 1169 onwards, Saladin Ayyubi began to rule Egypt and its dependencies as an independent ruler, as the deputy of Nureddin Mahmud Zengi. He fought against the Fatimids who resisted him and the Turks, as well as the Crusaders and Byzantines who supported them. He reorganized the army and opened Sunni madrasas and new institutions. One by one, he purged the Fatimids from the state, and finally, in 1171, he put an end to the Shiite Fatimid caliphate in Egypt and declared his allegiance to Abbasid caliphate in Baghdad. Thus, the two-headedness of the Islamic world came to an end, and the existing structure of 2 caliphates, one in Baghdad and one in Egypt, was replaced. Thus, the two-headedness of the Islamic world came to an end, and the existing structure of 2 caliphates, one in Baghdad and one in Egypt, was replaced. This event was one of the historical turning points in the unification of Muslims against the Crusaders. When Nureddin Mahmud Zengi died in 1174, Saladin Ayyubi established the Ayyubid state, which was named after him. Saladin Ayyubi founded this state not to live a life of pleasure, but to carry forward the banner of Islam. For this purpose, the sword of the Ayyubids was unsheathed. The first thing he did was to bind the Zengis, who were in turmoil, to his own lands. He took Syria, Palestine, Hejaz, Jordan, Yemen, and southeastern Anatolia under his sovereignty. While trying to ensure Islamic unity in the Middle East and fighting against the Crusaders, Saladin Ayyubi also had to fight against the Hashashis. In 1176, he defeated them. After taking control of Urfa, Haran, Raqqa, Habur, Nisabin, Al Jazeera, and Diyarbakir regions, he marched on Aleppo and added it to his territory. Thus, the road to Jerusalem was open to Saladin Ayyubi, who had sworn, "I will never take off my black clothes and never smile again until I conquer Jerusalem." He had established his own state, managed to gather all Muslim lands in the Middle East and Egypt under his own flag, and turned the balance of military power in his favor. As a result of uniting irregular forces, now he could march on Jerusalem with all his might. Before besieging Jerusalem, Saladin Ayyubi, with his military genius, planned to lure the enemy to another area and destroy them in a pitched battle. He first laid siege to the city of Tabriya in order to dislodge the unmoving Crusader army from its stronghold. It was a deception, but the Crusader army in Jerusalem had taken bait. Christians soon set out to help the fortress of Tabriya. Advancing Crusaders had reached Hittin in northern Palestine near Tabriya. The Ayyubids had destroyed water wells along the way after days of marching in July heat. The Crusaders' knights in heavy armor were exhausted, suffering from severe thirst. Saladin Ayyubi set up his headquarters between the Crusaders and Lake Tabriya, preventing them from reaching water. It was no longer possible for the Crusader army to return after this point. They had to face Saladin Ayyubi in desperation. On July 4, 1187, the Crusader army attacked exhausted and thirsty. In a day-long battle, Saladin Ayyubi's army achieved great victory over half the Crusader army of 30,000 killed. King of Jerusalem, Guy de Lusignan, his brother, the commander of the Knights Templar, and many other nobles among the captives. The Kingdom Jerusalem was largely destroyed and paved way in the conquest of Jerusalem castles and cities, such as Acre, Bitrun, Beirut, Sidon, Nazareth, Gaman, Caesarea, Nablus, Jaffa, Ashkelon, besieged captured by the Muslims within 3 months. The next target was Jerusalem, and Saladin Ayyubi finally set up his headquarters in front of Jerusalem on September 20, 1187, and asked the Balian commander Castle to surrender the city. When his offer was rejected and the siege began, Saladin Ayyubi took great care not to damage the holy city during the siege. Crusaders who failed to break siege and realized they could no longer defend the city after a while surrendered Jerusalem to the Muslims by opening its gates on Friday, October 2, 1187, after the castle commander Balian came out of the walls and met Saladin Ayyubi personally. Christians, who were expecting a massacre after the conquest, were on contrary shown great tolerance, and Jews were allowed to settle in the city as well as Christians. In the same year, Saladin Ayyubi led an expedition against the Count of Tripoli and the Principality of Antioch founded by the Crusaders, and captured several castles of Tripoli and most of the lands of the Principality of Antioch. The Christian front, which suffered a great loss of morale after the capture of Jerusalem by the Muslims, organized a new crusade with the participation of all Western European countries under the leadership of King Philippe Auguste of France, German Emperor Barbarossa, and King Richard the Lion-Hearted of England. There were fierce battles between the Ayyubids and the Crusaders for nearly 2 years, but Saladin Ayyubi frustrated all attempts by the Crusaders to take Jerusalem. When the Crusaders failed to take Jerusalem, they had to sign a peace treaty and return to Europe. Interestingly, however, after the Crusaders returned to Europe, Saladin Ayyubi suddenly fell ill, as if he had completed his mission in this world. After 2 weeks of feverish illness, the great commander who conquered Jerusalem died in Damascus on March 4, 1193. It is estimated that he was 55 or 56 years old when he died. The cause of his death has never been fully understood. For this reason, there were even some rumors that he was poisoned. His tomb is in the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus, which is today in Syria. He was an army commander, a statesman, and a just ruler, praised by both Eastern and Western historians.